Talking about an organization that likes working with dead people, the stock market continues its downward spiral as investors loom over what they see is an eventual shutdown. Delivery drivers originally refused to go into areas that were considered quarantine and have now agreed to return to work thanks to a government incentive that will give them a boost in pay based on the dangers they face. Still, investors see this as a band-aid for a missing arm, and eventually the government will need to pay back the claims, responsibilities, and operating costs. Even as big companies like Amazon say their packages will be delivered, which has netted some results, the overall confidence continues to stammer. If things continue on this course, the post office is projected to lose $2.4 billion this year because of the added expenses and those operating costs. And to switch gears, the presidential race has also switched gears. Shocking, I know. What was once a debate over income tax versus tax relief has now become a debate over spending and a potential pandemic, with the incumbent promising to dedicate millions in support to stricken areas and low income. One thing that they're trying to really push right now is that they're looking for some sort of vaccine or cure. He does not support slowing immigration attempts to fast-track a Dreamers bill that will allow for quicker path to citizenship for those seeking relief from the pandemic, or failing to deport individuals to countries that are currently affected by the illness. Counter to that position, the Republicans are now urging to close the border to any country that they believe may have potential infections, a stance that has stirred quite a bipartisan reaction, shocking enough. Civil defense has taken the spearhead to the response to the pandemic in order to allow an organized and varied response. They started their position by saying that PACE, as it's being called, has been verified in multiple areas throughout the U.S. and are now requesting all states begin monitoring the situation. They recommend hospitals in soft locations such as areas prone to illicit drug use and homeless encampments to be watched and monitored at all times. They say it's important to counter the illness before it spreads and to disallow civic presence in sweeps to deter rash acts. That last statement, we believe, is in regards to militias that many counties have deputized to assist in these sweeps, they're calling them. Sheriffs who have deputized civilians have defended their position on this, with actual multiple times saying they have denied that anything that was said by media was true and that they were not specifically targeting militia members, and that this was some kind of falsehood perpetuated by the media and not their respective agencies. Whether that's true or not has yet to be seen, so we will obviously have to keep an eye on that. Still, there are militiamen who are part of these policing activities, and for some that has been a concern. Civil defense is specifically targeting misinformation. They're requesting that media sources and social media alike prevent the dissemination of problematic words that may convey the wrong message. Codes and slang that have been used are walkers, dreamers, shamblers, ghouls, and most offensively, zombies. They believe this wording has dehumanized the infected and allow more extreme elements to feel they are justified in attacking and injuring individuals they believe are infected. This could also lead to hysteria as individuals see people in the wrong light and deterring gangs of individuals that attack others, which has been seen as by some as unacceptable. This was mostly clear in the Chicago area, where a variation of the knockout game has affected both infected and those who aren't, as gang members club individuals with bats or other blunt instruments without regard for injury because they've been told the infected are already dead. And in some cases, we've seen a lot of people that have been sent to the hospital for reasons unknown, other than just basically being in the wrong area. So some of this stuff, I tend to wonder if it's actually part of these games, or it's become something of a mainstream thinking in this new way of thinking that the pandemic has brought on. Civil defense did say they would consider quarantines and curfews, but they make it on a case-by-case basis, and that although they don't fully support them at this time, the situation is dynamic and if some areas are not aggressive with their policing, it could result in either. One of the big things they're not saying at the event, but they're saying everywhere else, is their testing for the illness has been pretty frequent in some hospitals and shelter areas. And apparently, these tests are readily available, and the majority of people are testing negative. And that brings us a good point that some people believe that they're sick. They take rash action, believing the junk they're hearing and causing a bigger problem that's seen by many as just unacceptable. And need I remind everyone of the War of Worlds? A lot of people say that the things that didn't happen as they were advertised, but I mean, who says it couldn't? I mean, if I knew I was going to turn into a monster that would eat my relatives, I'd make sure I'd make myself offed before it ever happened. Well, that is right after I ate my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, folks. We got to do anything to lighten the mood here. So I just hope that we're taking some of that pressure off of you. It is considered by many a difficult time. So make sure that you do add some lightheartedness. Find some comedy out there to change up the pace. There's a way to have too much pressure on you after a while, and that stress does tend to add up. So there's times when you're sick, and there's times when you make yourself sick. So make sure you get ahead of that. The great news is FBI has been working directly with the CDC and health officials to make sure that there are health advisors headed to every major center to advise on how to better treat and handle infected individuals. They were clear that, as we said before, even though the numbers are low, the truth is there are people showing as infected, and it's civil defense is right in saying we do need to get ahead of it. The major theme of every discussion we've heard with anyone we spoke with has been that controlling the spread of the disease is paramount, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. The long-term goals are vaccine, obviously, but what I was more concerned with was that no one was talking about a cure or some sort of treatment for a cure. No one person we discussed with would elaborate on a cure past a dismissive statement, and that's very telling to me that the cure should be an option on the table, and the idea that no one that we discussed with was willing to discuss a cure or even to elaborate that a cure was in the works somewhere, that's something that's very concerning. So it's something we're going to keep an eye on. I hope that, if you guys see something, that you will definitely relay it. And it really shows how different the dynamic of pace is, and it's something we've never faced before. And I personally think there's something that they aren't telling us. I'm not hearing that on any major news channel. It's been a follow the leader sort of response, and it makes sense because in essence we are flying blind. But I just feel like someone knows where this boat is headed, and I just want to be one of the people that knows in case we're headed into maybe a mountain. I mean, if you know what I mean. Nobody can tell the future, but what's making others warm and fuzzy in those last statements makes me more feel insecure about everything I've heard. It's like admitting that we don't have control. They don't know how to gain control, and perhaps control isn't even on the table. They're trying to treat the illness as seem like trying to play hot potato with a grenade that the pin has been removed. Nobody wants to let go, but your hand is getting hot, and it could just explode at any second. You don't want to be the one holding it when it goes off. What civil defense didn't say was it's been seeking control over the National Guard forces, which has come with an empathetic no. Civil defense complaint is that National Guard forces are not being adequately implemented, and it is true. Much of the main forces have been stationed at capitals and surrounding major infrastructure like hospitals. And some of these areas have seen no activity at all. The counter-argument has been that such a move could be seen as progression towards martial law, which many claim will never be enacted in the U.S. Governors and mayors both stated their opposition and were unified in their opinion, as well as Senate and House members who defiantly said no such move would ever be made. Now, is that something that would be an option in the future? Are they not seeing that far ahead, or are they just being dismissive? That's a question we can't answer at this time, but we're hoping that you're going to stay with us as we continue to follow this evolving situation in a dynamic way that will make sure that you stay informed of the news.